Good morning, dear Tyre friends. Holy Eden. Today is Wednesday, March 22nd, 2023, the 29th of Adar. So we have to chaparine the simcha and the joy of Adar, but we're here to study the entire Talmud, one page, one line at a time. And now let's see if the neural pathways are being recreated, because it is Pesachim. We are studying chapter 1, the 5th page, Hey Amud Aleph 5a. And if you aren't watching live, we love you. We still love you, but you should know you missed a 13-minute unit on the reason why we stand for the first Kaddish and Shemona Esrei, and why we sit for the second Kaddish. Don't ask me how that connects to the Gemara. I don't know. It doesn't. It had to do with the Holy Yidden. But now we'll jump into the Gemara. I should remind you. I'm sorry,
Rabbi.
Alan, go ahead.
When you said before, I forgot what I was going to say.
Alan, don't worry, I do that all the time.
The Kodesh. When you say one line, we're leading the Gemara one line at a time. It sounds like the angels doing one thing at a time.
Yeah. All right. So once again, as Alan noted, we are studying the entire Talmud one page, one line at a time. And you know where we're at, Pesachim, Hey on Aleph. Yesterday, we asked the question and we answered the question. The question was, why do we do B'dikas Chametz midday Erev Pesach? I'm sorry, why do we do Bir Chametz? Destroy the Chametz midday Erev Pesach. And we inferred that from a brayso that talks about, we know the B'dika has to happen the night before, and we talk about the Soif Zman Achilas Chametz, the end, the I don't know if you could use due date here, but anyways, the last time that you could eat chametz, I didn't want to say deadline. And the Gemara answered that we have a verse that talks about on the Yom Harishon you destroy the chametz, and we said it's not talking about the first day of Pesach, because obviously you can't even have chametz then. So it's talking about Erev Pesach. How do we know it's not the night before? We should destroy the chametz when sun sets or before sunset. So we say bayom. Bayom indicates it's dafke a day in the daytime. So why is it midday? It should be the beginning of the day. So the Gemara then introduced us this interesting, thought-provoking comment of ach virak cholkin. Whenever you have the word ach, but, or rak only, it's coming to limit. It's coming to walk back some of the restriction, or to walk back some of the halacha. And we meet it halfway. So what do we mean walking back? Without the word ach, in the Torah Shebal Peh Chazal method of analyzing a pasuk, I would assume that it means Erev Pesach in the morning. So right with nets, we'd have to do B'dikas Chametz or Amod HaShachar, whatever it is. Alois, to figure out which one of those is mine. But anyways, in the morning. However, the ach tells us there's a downsizing of the restriction. How would that work? So we back it up to midday. That was what we said yesterday, based on a limud. The limud, the pasuk, I believe the analysis, the interpretation, the drasha of that pasuk was part of the oral tradition. Meaning, it's not like some rabbi sat around and said, hey, how can we tinker with this pasuk? This pasuk, when it was given by Moshe Rabbeinu, said this pasuk is given in a shorthand, in code, conveying this message, the destruction of the chametz. And this is how you decipher it. And it was conveyed down through the generations, and that's how we do it. The Gemara today is going to continue in the vein of analyzing psukim, and I don't know if it's everyone's favorite type of Gemara, but when we learn Gemara, you have to always be on standby, because you never know what kind of style conversation, what kind of topic we're going to uncover. And today we're going to start off asking, and not taking for granted that the Yom HaRishon could actually mean Erev Yom. Usually, we would imagine by Yom HaRishon would mean the first day, which is actually how we would translate by Yom HaRishon if we were not sophisticated, educated. We know Hebrew. We would say by Yom HaRishon means on the first day, and that's commonly what it means. And so the Gemara is going to probe that, and that's going to be at least the first topic of our study today, analyzing, reviewing the Pesachim. Here we go. So actually, the Gemara starts off by giving a support, by proving that this is acceptable. But of course, you can understand that that's going to be questioned. And the statement itself is coming as an answer to an obvious question, which is since when and who says that Yom HaRishon could ever mean the first day. I would like to note that today is the first full day of Shiva. The second day, yesterday, we had the funeral for Mendel, Wolf, Ben, Baruch Laser, Mendel Seidner. He was a regular here at Shul for a number of years. His parents were here for 20 plus years. His parents are both deceased. And he was actually in the year of Kaddish for his mother, so we would see him almost every day. And it's very tragic and sad. And so I want to dedicate today's learning for his neshama. And I want to thank those who were partners to the mitzvah of making sure the family didn't have to worry about the kavura. And if anyone is interested, there is still some mitzvah opportunity in that regards, but we'll do that off the recording. Debate Rabbi Yishmael Tana. From the house of Rabbi Yishmael, the school of Rabbi Yishmael, taught as follows. Motzinu arba asar shenikra rishain. There is a precedent that we would describe the 14th day of the month, which is the day before holiday. You can call it Rishain. Even though Rishain usually means the first day of the month, Shenemar. Barishain. Barba asar lachodesh. Here is the pasuk in the very same chapter, in the very same conversation. Barishain. Also, Yom Lachodesh, Koichlo Matzos, in the very first day, in the Pesach Rishon, as we call it, the year of the Exodus, they were instructed to eat, to do the Carbon Pesach, and to observe Matzah, and they're told, Barishain, in the first month, Arba also Yom on the 14th day, Lachodesh. But Erev, that night, to Koichlo Matzah, so the night that follows, the 14th, they should eat Matzah, until the 21st day of the month. In Parshas HaChodesh, which we read last Shabbos, where we describe not only the mitzvah of Rosh Chodesh, and Hashem says there's going to be an Exodus. Hashem is going to take the Jewish people out, and they should do a Carbon Pesach, and they should put the blood, etc., with specific instructions of how they should eat the Carbon Pesach. They're also given a long-term instruction for how they're going to observe Pesach. And this day will always be a remembrance. And it should be observed as Chag L'Hashem L'Derei Sechem for all generations. Shivas Yom Matzos Techel. Again, these are verses we read on Shabbos and we read yesterday. And we're going to keep this open so we can keep on reviewing it. But here it's talking about Rishon and Shvi, and it's probably talking about actual Pesach. But here, Rishain Ba'arba also Yom. The pasuk itself describes that the word Rishain describes Erev Pesach.
But Rishon was the first month.
I'm sorry?
But Rishon means the first month, which is Nisan. And it says Rishon, Arba Sarba the Rishon.
Correct. So let's see the Gemara. Meaning, you're right. The Pirish HaPashit is Barishan means the first month. But we find a usage of the word Barishan in the context of the 14th day. But you're making a good point. If we were literal translators, we might not note this. Let's read it. We find the word Rishon in description of Arba Asar 14 Shnemar, Barishain on Rishain, Arba Asar Yom Lachodesh on the 14th day of the month. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Amar. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak is an interesting explanation. He says like this: Rishain, the word Rishon here, the Meikara Mashma. Meikara means before the start. Or in Rabbi Steinsaltz's translation, prior, before. The Amarkra, that's certainly not the common interpretation. Dr. Stamler is saying, I grew up in Tel Aviv, and I learned it was your native language, and you know many people, and you've never heard the word Rishon to not mean the first, but to mean before. There's another word for before. I think it's Lifnei. Right? So we don't usually use the word before, Rishon. But actually, there is a pasuk that actually, if you look at if you think about what it means, it actually means prior. Talmar Kra, in Eov, the verse says, Harishain Adam Tivaled, which actually, based on the question of this translation, others explain it differently. Harishain Adam Tivaled, were you born before man? I think that's how you would translate it. Let's see if I can get another translation. Were you born before Adam Harishan? That would be how we're translating. Harishan Adam Tivaled, were you born Harishon before Adam? Tivaled, were you born before Adam Harishon? Rashi, Lavrum Yedekra Hadadi Mashma, Rishon, B'Mashmos Tekra, Shehu Yaim Kaidim Lachol Shiva Dekra. Once you have the context of Psukim, here Rishon sounds like it means before all the other. Kivan Nechsiv Shivas Yama Matzos Techelu, Achbayim Rishon, Rishon Kaidim Ma'aseh Kamar. So basically, one could easily and reasonably translate that when we say Rishon, we mean a day that precedes the other first day of Pesach. Harishon Adam Tivalid. So Rashi translates Hakoidem La Adam Harishon Elet Neiladeta. Were you born before Adam Harishon? And so we see a precedent that Rishon can mean the day before. And so when we say that you have to destroy the chametz, Rishon, we mean the day prior to Pesach. Okay. Now I'm curious to see how Rashi translates this verse in Eov. And interestingly enough, Rashi in Eov gives the same translation. Habiterem Adam Tivaled. Before the existence of Adam were you born? Hey Hazois Mishameshes Lashon Tema. The hey indicates that it's a question. Anyways, okay. And the rest of the discussion is with about grammar. Now you'll note, because it's a funny word, because that's a funny expression, not all translators follow Rashi. And so the translator of the JPS Chumash in 1985 translated differently. They say, were you the first man born? Harishan Adam Tivali, are you the first Adam? So the question is here, does Adam mean Adam, or does it mean the first human being? Rashi says it means Adam. Other translators will say it means a person. Anyways, I suspect that part of what informs how Rashi learns, teaches the pasuk is from our Gemara. Anyways, the Bei Rabbi Yishmael teach there's a precedent that we would describe Rishon as the 14th day of the month. It's how we might understand the word Barishon Bar Ba'asar.
Couldn't you try to make it sound like the first light of the day, the beginning, the first?
No, that's usually how we would think it means. So we have two different explanations. I don't know if I properly noted the difference here. The school of Rabbi Yishmael teach. We know that Rishon means Arba Asr because the verse actually says Barishon Arba Asr, using a drasha. There's a problem with that drasha. As Mark points out, Barishon usually describes the first month. Rav Nachman says, forget the drasha, forget the context. We know the word Rishon might mean before. And so the pasuk itself, without any juxtaposition or comparison, already could mean Rishon. So the Gemara is making the case that it's not entirely unheard of that we could describe Rishon to be Erev Pesach. The Gemara says, hold your horses, hold on a second. It's not like we've never used the word Rishon before. And so are you trying to tell me that the word Rishon has a different meaning than we've always understood? Elamayata. Let's think about another verse where we use the word Rishon by Sukkis. Kachdem lachem. By Yoim Harishon, the Torah says, take the arba minim, take the four kinds by Yoim Harishon. Now you, Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, say Rishon means Erev, prior, day 0, or -1. How would we say that? Is that correct? -1 or 0. Anyways. Are you suggesting that the mitzvah of Lulav and Esrog takes place on Erev Sukkis? That does not sound right. But if we're going to follow your reasoning, that's where we end up.
Rabbi.
Yeah.
On a larger scale, what's going on in the argument is, if you change the meaning of this word in one place, I'm going to go to other places and change it also.
Correct. Exactly. Once
But we have to go back to dual meaning, just like or. Or
so that's
evening in some places.
That's the question essentially. And what's going on over here?
Seems like Pesachim, they're really trying to change our basic words, change or to evening, change Rishon to before, and
Right. But do we want to do that?
That's exactly, yeah.
Rabbi, could I just ask a question here?
Go ahead.
These people are writing the Gemara, aren't they?
Who's these people?
What were the people we're talking about? The sages we're talking about.
These sages are dialoguing, and their dialogues become recorded in the Gemara. Correct. We're eavesdropping on their conversations.
So they're not changing the Gemara
No, the Gemara
or
is
adding
their
to the
dialogue.
Gemara. Okay, so now I understand what the Gemara, when they say the Gemara asks. Because I thought these people were the ones who were the Gemara. They were building up the Gemara.
Yeah, meaning the Gemara really is an intergenerational dialogue. We have a teaching from Rabbi Shmuel. And sometimes the question, and this is a good point. Sometimes Rabbi Shmuel will say something, and in that very conversation, he'd be challenged. Other times, and the Gemara, by the way, I believe brought this to make sense out of our previous assertion that Rishon that we're discussing Erev Pesach. It was based on context, but the Gemara wants to fortify that and say, yeah, it's heard of. It's something that could happen. And then the Gemara itself says, hold on a second. Does that really make sense? Could that work? Let's think this through. If you're going to start telling me that the word Rishon or B'yom HaRishon means Erev, means the 14th of the month, Erev Yontif, well, then you might have a problem here because there's another pasuk that uses a similar expression about the Arba Minim. And are you telling me that Lulav and Esrog is to be taken on Erev Pesach, on Erev Sukkot? Obviously not. But how would we know that? You can't just change the meaning. So the Gemara answers, you know what? You're right. And I think this is really what he's saying. What Mark said. Rishon could either mean, Rishon generally means the first. But the first could be the first day of the unit, but it could also possibly mean the day prior. How do we know which use we use? So the Gemara says there's a context that has to be considered. Shani Hasan. Tichsiv usmachtem lifnei Hashem alekechem shivas yom. In the context of Sukkot, it says you shall rejoice before Hashem 7 days. Ma shvi'i lachag. Just as we clearly understand in this context that the seventh day of the month, the seventh day means the seventh day of holiday. In that context, by inference, Rishon means the first day of the holiday. Gemara says, hold on a second, you can't do that. Don't try to pull a fast one. Let's go back to Sukkot. Let's go back to Pesach. Hachanami, ksivach b'yom harishon tashbisu shivas yomim matzos techelu. We describe a holiday that's a 7-day unit, and so surely Rishon would be also the first day of the holiday. So the Gemara says no. There's a different code that tells us that here we're talking about a different day than the first day of the holiday. Imkain nichtov kara Rishon b'yom Rishon harishon lamali. Why is there that, hey, Harishan, putting a spotlight that there's something special or different? Harishan tells us that it actually means Erev Pesach, the Rishon, not the normal Rishon, which is the first day of the holiday. It's Harishan. It's the day that predates, that precedes. Shmamina, Liched Amoron, and that's how we know that it actually means Erev Pesach. So you're right. Yom Rishon, just like, hold on.
Shorter day.
Mark, you're talking to us?
Yeah. If you have if you say first day is Erev Pesach and you count 7 days, then you're short 1 day of Pesach.
Exactly. So we're saying basically you have a 7-day unit, and there's the first day of the 7-day unit, and there's the 7th day of the 7-day unit. But then there's the pasuk that says Yom Harishon, which talks about Bir Chametz, because there's that hey. It's a special Rishon, not the normal Rishon. Normal Rishon would be the first day of the holiday. Harishon means Erev Pesach. Before you ask any question, let the Gemara do the questioning. Hold a second. Go back to Sukkot. Don't pull a fast one over us. It also says, B'yom Harishon, u'lekachtem lachem b'yom Harishon. So if you're telling me Harishon means Erev Pesach, Erev Yontif, you're going to have to do the same thing to Sukkot. We don't do the same thing to Sukkot. So something doesn't make sense. So Hasam d'chsiv, b'yom harishon Shabbosin, u'b'yom hashmini Shabbosin, eim harishon de meikara mashma. The same thing. We have harishon. Maybe it means Erev Yontif. So the Gemara says, Shani Hasan Namakra, Ubayom Hashmini Shabbasin. Mashmini, Shmini the Chag, Afrishan Rishon the Chag. Because by Sukkot it says Shmini and Rishon. Now we understand that it's the bookmarks of the holiday itself. But by Pesach, where we only have Ha Rishon, because by Pesach we only have a reference to Ha Rishon. We don't have a reference to the Yom HaShvi'i. We know it's a different Rishon than the usual Rishon. It means Erev Pesach. All right. Now let's think about Sukkot. Let's go back to our Sukkot discussion. So again, let me just give a fast recap. By Pesach, it says B'Yom Harishon Tashbisu Sa'ar. On the first day, you should obliterate the chametz. And we said this word Harishon was structured in a special way, and so we know that it is Erev Sukkot, Erev Pesach. It's 1A, or actually in books, what do you do before you start page 1? It's Roman numerals. So the first day would be 1 in a Roman numeral. Yeah, makes sense? Before the beginning of the book, before page 1, before day 1. So you have a 1 that comes before day 1. Rebel, you're rolling your eyes.
No, preface.
Preface. So the first Rishon is the preface. It precedes page 1. We said, hold on. Some of the claims, some of the assertions you made hypothetically should be imposed into the verses describing Sukkot, but we don't do that. How would you square the two? And so the Gemara says, yeah, but Sukkot has certain distinct factors that clarify that it's not the preface, it's not Roman numeral 1 or whatever you call it, it means the first day. So now the Gemara is going to go back and visit for a moment the Sukkot use of the Yom Harishon.
Rabbi,
Yes.
how many times does the word Rishon appear in the Torah? I can imagine, here we picked 2 examples. If I was in this argument, I would start going through Rishon every single place and see what we could learn. Maybe I'm lost. I don't know.
The Gemara effectively is doing that here.
I mean, Rishon appears more than the Sukkot and the Pesach, I imagine.
In the context of Rishon being the first day of a unit of time, we're giving we're going to be doing a little bit of a survey here. But you're right. When we finish this, any Rishons that are not noted should be brought into the mix, and then we on our own could probably try to figure out based on the tools the Gemara provides. So the Gemara again here. Let's just repeat this. Why does it say Harishon by Sukkot? We said that by Pesach, Harishon teaches me Erev Pesach. But if Sukkot does not mean Erev Pesach, why does it say Harishon? So based on that, why does it actually say Harishon? If Harishon here is part of the unit of the 8-day holiday or 7-day holiday, it's not the preface, it's not Roman numeral I, is that right? 1 in Roman numerals is I, right?
Yeah, but that would be page 1.
Page 1 before the page 1.
The little I is what they use in the preface, right? They have I with the
right.
lowercase. Yeah.
So page 1 before page 1.
It's too bad
right.
that Talmud didn't use footnotes.
Well, no. I was using that as an analogy to understand that you could have 1 that precedes page 1, right?
Right.
Harishon, and that would be, I think, the only analogy in our experience where you might have a Rishon that precedes Rishon. So if that's the case, that in the holiday of Sukkot, the mitzvah of Lulav and Esrog, it's the first day of Yontif. So why does it use the Ha Rishon? There's something special about this Rishon that makes it different than an ordinary Rishon. What does the Hey teach us? Gemara says, to tell me that Chol Hamoed does not have restrictions. Which pasuk are we talking about? Hold on, let's find it.
Mikra Kodesh and not Kol Malachas Avadolos Asu.
B'chamisha also Yom LaChodesh Hashvi'i. As bechemes tuas haaretz tachaygus Chag Hashem Shivas Yomim. Vayom Harishon Shabbos and Vayom Hashmini Shabbos. Observe it as a day of rest. Don't do melacha on Sukkot. So we said Harishon means something distinct. By Pesach, Harishon means it actually goes before the Rishon. Roman numeral I. So what is Harishon here teaching us something special? Our Gemara says Harishon teaches us that the restriction of Shabbosin is only the first and last day, and not Chol HaMoed. And that's why it says Harishon. Again. Harishon Lamali. Lamuti Chayl Shalmai. To tell us on a Chol HaMoed, you don't have to do Malach. Gemara says, hold on, it doesn't work. Read English, read Hebrew, translate. You'd know it without any special limud. Why? And read the verse. Bayoim Harishon, Bayoim Hashmini. Only the first day and the eighth day. That's the context. That's the meaning. Mirishon Ushmini Nafka. What's the hey? Midchsi Bahanu Shabbosin. We already know that the remainder are not days of rest. We don't need the hay. The Gemara says Itzrich. Actually, you do need the hay. I might have thought the Kasav Rachamana Ubayam Hashmini and on the eighth day. Vav Ma'asav Al-Yerushin. I feel like the language of Ubayam Hashmini might have made me think that it was all along, all the days in between Rishon Ubayam Hashmini until the eighth day.
Rabbi, could we ask the same question about Chol HaMoed on Pesach?
No, because the question here is not about the halachas of Chol HaMoed. The question is about the structure of the verses, right?
So where did we learn out Chol HaMoed for Pesach? That it shouldn't be yontif the whole 7 days?
No.
8 days?
The Gemara is not proposing that Chol HaMoed should not be Chol HaMoed. The Gemara is analyzing that absent certain information, I might have thought. And that's exactly the next question. Don't confuse us with the Ubayom Hashmini. Don't confuse us with the Vav. That made me think maybe all of Sukkot is Yontif. And then you want me to do the Hey. Hey, to teach us that it's only the first day and not the remainder of the days of Chol HaMoed is only necessitated because of the way the Yom Hashmini is written. And also remember, there's another verse that says Bayom Harishon, and you already taught me that Bayom Harishon could mean Me'ikara, the day prior. It would mean Roman numeral I. So what's going on? Elahani Shleish Harishon Mivayle. So the Gemara says, actually, there's a different reason, a special reason why we use the Harishons that we have unaccounted for. Let's read this carefully. The Tana of the Shmuel, B'schar Shloisha Rishon, Zachu L'Shloisha Rishon. You know why we use this word Bayom Rishon? Even though it's confusing and different, it's because we want to make a very, very important religious point. That the Jewish people observed 3 Rishons, 3 holidays that all are described as Bayom Harishon. And because of that, they got to do 3 other mitzvahs that were representative of blessings, good blessings. They're going to have Lahachar Zarei Shel Esav. They'll have the opportunity to obliterate the descendants of Esav, to be rid of that menace. Lebinyan Beis Hamikdash, to the construction of the Beis Hamikdash, Ulishmai Shel Mashiach. Let's read some Rashis, and then if we need to, we'll read some Rabbi Steinsaltz's, and let's make sense of this. El Mahani Shloisha Shlovishin. The Ksiv b'Mikra Kaidem de Pesach, u'Mikra Kaidesh the Sukkos, u'Mitzvahs Lulav. In the description of Pesach, and in the description of Sukkos, and in the description of Lulav, 3 different mitzvahs. It says Rishon. Like Tosa le Rav Nachman dahani rishon dechsibahu lav lemashmat lemash Messiah kaso ella shma ba'almahu. The nikarishan kedetana the b'rishma. The Gemara is now saying that we're not going to use Rabbi Nachman's teaching. Rabbi Nachman's teaching was that Rishon means meikara mashma. We say no. The Rishons are coming not to tell us about time and date. It's coming to describe a certain uniqueness about the holiday. It is so special. It is supreme. It is original. It's early. It's first. Because they are special holidays that the Jewish people merit 3 special mitzvahs that are also associated with the word shleish, with Rishon. Shvisas haregel de Pesach. Shvisas haregel de Chag. Unatilas lulav shnekro rishonim zachul shleish Rishon. So what's happening over here? Usually we say every word in the Chumash and every letter in the Chumash has to be teaching us a unique, new halach. And therefore we were confused about the words Rishon that were not the Rishon that we were talking about. Why is there, let me clarify. We have a word, Bayam Rishon, about the destruction of Chametz. And we said it means Erev Pesach. And the Gemara asked, hold on, but there's a whole bunch of other Rishons that don't mean Roman numeral 1, it doesn't mean before the first day. So the Gemara tried to explain and twist into a pretzel why each of those Rishons didn't mean the first day. The Gemara says, no, it's simple. Strike those Rishons from the available words to give a drasha. They don't mean the first day, and they don't mean before the first day. They mean to talk about something very special about the holiday that makes it beautiful and significant. Because they gave a great zechus to the Jewish people. Where do we see that the word Rishon is also used about Esav? The Hachrizar Shalamolek Esav Dechsiv. When Esav was born, he came out first. He is described as a Rishon. And in the schos of the observation of the holiday, the Jewish people will eventually be saved from the Rishon that was trouble, a menace. And also they're going to be zeichet to build a Beis Hamikdash, because it says Kisei Kavod Maroim Merishain Makai Mikdashena. Let's read the verse in the translation here. The throne of glory on high from the Rishain, from the beginning, the place of our temple. The Mashiach, the Chsiv Rishain, Letzion, Hine, Hinam. A harbinger to Zion, to Zion, behold them. However, Harishan, with regards to Pesach, does describe Erev Pesach, and without a problem. You know what's funny? You know what we call the chief rabbi, the chief Sephardic rabbi of Israel?
Yeah, Rishon LeZion.
Rishon LeZion. So did you ever consider that we're calling the chief Sephardic rabbi the Rishon LeZion based on a pasuk that's describing Mashiach? I'll be honest, when I learned this Gemara, I didn't note that, but this is an interesting something to note.
So we're translating this Rishon differently. No problem.
Rishon LeZion, Hinei Hinam. The Gemara says that's Mashiach. Rishon LeZion. Very interesting. So what? Okay, this concludes our discussion. So let me just remind you, it was a long, twisting road till we got here. The Gemara wants to know, how do we know we destroy the chametz on our Pesach, and we use the verse by Yom HaRishon, Ach Yom HaRishon Tishpisosar. And here we said Rishon means Erev Pesach. Problem, as Rebero noted, is there other uses of the word Rishon that don't mean Erev, that don't mean before the holiday. And we try twisting ourselves into a pretzel this way and that to explain how each of those Rishons needed to mean the first day of the holiday because of a broader context, and it was rough. We barely held on, and we didn't really make it. And the Gemara, finally, a white knight came riding to the rescue and said, hold on a second, you don't need to do that. All the other Rishons, the 3 Rishons that we quoted, were not coming to teach us about, we're not coming to talk about the first day or before the first day. We use that to teach us a special limud, that they are a great zechus that will afford the Jewish people incredible bracha, incredible, beautiful blessings. All right, I'll have to check this out, but not now. Very interesting. Period. This ends that discussion. Rava has another. Now we need to press pause, and we're gonna go back to the beginning of our discussion, and we're gonna bring another source about when chametz is destroyed. Previously, we used the pasuk Achor Yom Harishon Tashbisa Samar Vatechem. It means Erev Pesach, and it means by Yom in the daytime, and it means Ach in the middle of the day. Rava has a totally different source to make the same halachic point. And so we're going back to our original discussion, which is how do we know when to destroy the chametz? Rava says there's a different verse. What's that verse? In describing the Karban Pesach, it says, Lo sishchat al chametz dam zivchi. Don't slaughter over chametz the blood of the zevach of the carbon. Which means, Lo tishchat ha Pesach v'adayin chametz kayam. Don't do Karban Pesach while you still have chametz in your jurisdiction. So how does that teach us that by midday you need to be done with your chametz? That's going to be the next question the Gemara asks. Hold on a second. Let's read this Rashi. Leisishchat al chametz. Ushchitas Pesach, slaughtering the Karban Pesach. Zemano, when are you allowed to do it? B'tchila Sheva, the beginning of the 7th hour of the day, right after midday. Shubein harbayim. That's shikvar noita chamal etzach kiyasa. Once the sun is just a notch above the middle of the sky, it's beginning to set. And indeed, the Gemara in Yoma says this. Basically, we understand that Karban Pesach and the Karban Tamid happens at the beginning of the 7th hour, at the beginning of the setting of the sun. Long story short, Rashi gives us an interesting additional insight. But the point here we make is that the earliest you could do the Karban Pesach is midday or just after midday. And so that time is exactly the time you're not allowed to have chametz anymore. Seemingly a much more straightforward source. The Gemara asks an interesting question. There's another carbon that has to be brought before Karban Pesach, and that carbon has to be brought at midday. So really, Karban Pesach doesn't start at midday. It's a little bit after midday, but in a mess-up situation, Pesach would be kosher from them. Now the Gemara asks a question. Rava, if you tell me the pasuk teaches no chametz around when you bring the Karban Pesach, so then every person should have their own soif zman achilas chametz. Every person needs to make sure to be done of their chametz by the time they do the shechita. Some people do, and let me just remind you, you may recall that the Karban Pesach was brought in waves and shifts. And so you had the early birds, you had the yekes who arrived right on time, and then you had, I don't want to insult any specific demographic.
Then you had Chabad whenever you get there.
Then you had the folks who have a certain reputation of being late all the time who arrive for the third unit. And so they would have to destroy chametz later. I want to tell you something. I always take great offense because in our shul, we're pretty punctual. Except for the second minyan on Shabbos, where we sometimes have to wait for the first minyan to finish. But other than that, we try to be very punctual. And I have people come and say, this is Chabad, how you're punctual or whatever. And I take a little bit of offense at the stereotype, but I can't say it's entirely unwarranted. So
I think the best line is Yeke Chabad is exactly 1 hour late.
yeah. Anyways.
Av simchas.
So the Gemara says, so then let every person have to get rid of chametz in their own zman. The Gemara says, no, zman shchita marachamana. The Torah doesn't say your shchita. The Torah talks about the zman shchita. Rashi, ema kol chad v'chad. Yivaer samach l'shchita. You know what everyone should do? You go to the mount, up the Har Bayis, and you'll have your animal reins or whatever in one hand, and your little pekula of chametz in your left hand. And right before you go to bring the Karban Pesach, you make a little bonfire, you burn your chametz, and then you can go shecht. Yivar samach l'shchita samatim shah atesha yivareno b'tesha. And so if you're a late Karban Pesacher, that's when you do the beer. So the Gemara says no, zman shchita. The Torah doesn't say you do the shechita; it says the time of shechita. We don't have such a thing that every Jew has their own zman. Being that the Torah gave a time, every person has the same equal time. That is the Gemara's case. We have a brisa that supports that this is the makar of Rava's teaching. Here's the brisa. You have to obliterate your chametz. Does it mean the night of Yontif? Does it mean the day before Yontif or on Yontif? I wouldn't know. Therefore, there's another pasuk. Don't shecht the carbon pesach with chametz around. This is the teaching of Rabbi Yishmael. So we see from Rabbi Yishmael that we ultimately depend on the verse al chametz to tell us that the beer happens erev Pesach. Rabbi Kiva says, no, I have no need for the pasuk of Lo sishchat al chametz dam zivchi. Harehu oimer. Ach b'yom harishain tashbisa samer v'teichen. Uksiv komalacha lo itasu. It says you should obliterate the chametz, but it also says that on Yontiv you cannot do malacha. Umatzinu lavara she'ab malacha, and we also know that fire burning is a malacha. Therefore, we understand that the destruction, the obliteration of the chametz needs to be happening on erev Pesach when there's no prohibition of doing malacha. You're all asking a good question. What's the question? No? Fregshoin. What's the big resounding challenge to Rabbi Akiva? Rabbi Akiva says you're not allowed to burn stuff on Yontiv.
Not for, but only for cooking, though.
No, that's the answer. Say the question.
Whoops.
We know you're allowed to burn stuff and light a fire on Yontif. You're allowed to heat up your chicken soup on Yontif. You're allowed to cook I don't know what. Matzo ball soup on Yontif. So how can Rabbi Akiva say you're not allowed to make fire and burn stuff on Yontif?
You light candles.
You're allowed to light candles on Yontif. So Rashi says, very good question. This burning of chametz would be lighting a fire and burning stuff for no need. Because of asur malacha b'yontif. The Torah does not allow malacha except for oichel nefesh. Hilka high rishain barba asur kamar. So by deduction, we must suppose that the bir chametz happens on erev yontif. Now, there's another big question to this. When the Torah instructs one to do a act of malacha, it's a lot to be done. For example, in the Beis Hamikdash, if there's a mitzvah to bring a carbon on Shabbos, so we desecrate Shabbos to bring that carbon. Right? We don't. And if the Torah tells us to do an act, a positive mitzvah, it would push aside a broad, general loisasa, wouldn't it? All right. Tyson is asking another question. You could put the coals of chametz to use. All right, let's see a third source in the Brisa to how we know that Bedikas chametz happens on Erev Pesach and not on Pesach. Rabbi Yossi says, Rabbi Kiva, I don't even need your explanation. Why? How do I know that you have to do bir chametz on Erev Pesach? It says on the first day, destroy the chametz. Is it on Yontif or Erev Yontif? Is it on the 14th of the month or the 15th of the month? That's what the word ach means. Ach tells us, back it up. Not your intuitive reading. You think you're allowed to destroy chametz on Yontif? We compare the destruction of chametz to eating matzah, the destruction of chametz to the eating of chametz, and you're not allowed to eat, and eating chametz to eating matzah. The time that you eat matzah, you can't eat chametz, and the time that you eat matzah, you can't have chametz. Therefore, we know that you have to destroy it on Erev Yontif. I don't know. This feels like a combo of some of the previous psukim. The only difference is we use the word ach here, according to Rabbi Yossi, to teach us not what you think. The Torah says ach, which means you're allowed to have the chametz for a little bit of the day. You have to destroy it. But you're not allowed to keep chametz around on Yontif, on Pesach. Okay, Rashi explains this nicely. Now I understand. Ach is not teaching me it's not that it's a different day. Ach is teaching me that part of the day that you have to destroy chametz, you can have chametz, and it cannot be on Pesach. Because you're not allowed to have chametz around at all on Pesach. Thank you, Rashi. And that's why you need Rashi. So Rabbi Yossi has a third different shot. The Herst Amarova Shmaminam and Rabbi Kiva Tlas. So we have three opinions here in this brisa. We have Rabbi Yishmael. Did I go too far? We have Rabbi Yishmael, who says, uses Leitishchat to infer that it has to be on Erev Pesach. Because once you have the carbon Pesach, you're not allowed to have chametz. Rabbi Kiva gives another explanation. You can't do malacha. Destroying chametz is a malacha. So Rava says, Shema Mino Rabbi Kiva's assertion that you have to do bir chametz, and you're not allowed to light a fire. So obviously it's Erev Pesach. We infer three unique facets of Rabbi Kiva's understanding, of bir chametz. Number one, ein bir chametz elos reifa. There's only one mode of getting rid of chametz, and that is by burning. Ushma Mino. And we also learn havara lechalek yatsa. When the Torah mentions the prohibition of lo sevaro eish bechol moshe v'oseichem, it was singled out to be an av melacha, to really be one of the melachas. Ushma mina, and we also learn here a third thing. You might think on Yontif, you're allowed to use a fire to cook food and to light candles, which are part of your Yontif experience. So you should also be allowed to do a fire, even if there is no benefit. Let's read Rabbi Steinsaltz. No, actually, he just so there you have a difference. Today's Gemara, a long Gemara, very into the Psukim, very into the Drasha. We started off spending a long time trying to make sense of how Rishon could mean preface, Roman numeral I. How could it mean the Rishon that's before the Rishon? How could it be prior? We brought some Psukim. We tried to bring some proof. But then we cross-referenced it with other uses of the word Rishon, which do not mean prior. And so what's going on? How do you make sense of those psukim? The Gemara attempted for a while to analyze each one of those uses of Rishon to explain why they specifically needed to be understood as the first day, as if to say, default Rishon means Erev. But Rishon with certain unique factors becomes the first day of Yontif. But then the Gemara salvaged that and said, one second, no. All those Rishons that we're struggling with are actually not coming to talk about the date at all. It's coming to teach us something else. It's coming to teach us a special zchus that is a result of those three Rishons. Then the Gemara brought us alternate ways that we know that bir chametz happens on Erev Pesach, based on chametz, based on the fact that it's a malacha, and based on the fact that you're not allowed to have chametz at all on Pesach. And the Ach teaches us that you could have chametz a little bit of the day of the bir chametz, so we understand that it's talking about Erev Pesach. Rava caps off today's session by reading into Rabbi Kiva's teaching about the fire, that you're not allowed to burn the chametz on Pesach. We understand a lot more now about how Rabbi Kiva understands the prohibition of fire and the obligation of obliterating chametz. Rabbi Kiva says obliterating chametz is only through fire, and the prohibition of fire is a malacha, and there's no license to use fire beyond the limited heter of tzorich oichal nefesh. My difference today was a Gemara kind of Gemara day. Thank you for holding on tight. Thank you for tuning in. It should be a big bracha for the members of our Chabura that are here, that are usually here, and it should be a zechus for the neshama of Mendel, Wolf ben Baruch Laser, and we should only have good news and healthy news and happiness.
Rabbi,
Shmaya for tuning in,
after
everyone.
you stop the recording, I want to ask you a question.
Hold on.